Let's start right there with the defense. This is the X's presented by Pepsi. And we have to talk about the leader of this team. That is Jack Del Rio. So he played as a linebacker. He was drafted in the 3rd round, 68th overall by the New Orleans Saints. He was awarded the NFL All-Rookie honors. And then with the Kansas City Chiefs, traded for a 5th-round pick. He was claimed off of waivers by the Dallas Cowboys and as a free agent signed to the Minnesota Vikings. In 1992, as the NFC Defensive Player of the Week, he led the team in tackles for 3 consecutive seasons and selected to a Pro Bowl. He finished his career in Miami. Santana, if we talk about his career stats, 160 games, over 1,000 tackles, 13 sacks, 13 interceptions, 14 fumble recoveries, and 2 TDs.
He did his thing in the 90s. If you really look him up and see where he was at, I think he had like a 5-year stretch where he had 100+ tackles. And he was a guy that been a lot of places and shows you that he can play in any system. So it's great to have that kind of leadership here because, like, we're going to talk about today, those guys always, to me, panned out and fit well as coaches.
So when he finished playing, he did not walk away from the game as he decided coaching was his next path, right? His first coaching gig was with the Saints as strength and conditioning coach under Mike Ditka back in 1997. Then he moved over to the linebacker coach in 98. The year after that, he took the linebacking job with the Baltimore Ravens and partially credit for that 2000 Super Bowl champion defensive Ravens team.
They were stacked on that defense.
Weren't they? Man, you talk about defense wins championships. You were not getting anything on them that year.
I was a pup watching them in the Super Bowl.
That was my first year here. Oh, no, that was the second one. All right, 2001, defensive coordinator with the Carolina Panthers. In 02, the defense ranked 2nd only in total yards allowed. In 03, he went to the Jacksonville Jaguars as the head coach. His first season, he went 5-11, my hometown. In 2004, he finished 9-7 with a 2nd-ranked rush defense, 6th overall best defense, and then he was let go and fired in 2011. The year after that, he went to the Broncos as defensive coordinator, and then a few years later, he was with the Oakland Raiders as head coach. So there you go. He now brings all of that expertise to the Washington Football Club. And one of the things that they liked about him when they hired him is that he did have that head coaching experience, now taking on the defensive coordinator role. So here again, the X's presented by Pepsi. Santana, how important is it, do you think, to have that head coaching experience when you are taking on the coordinator role? Does the players kind of view that a little bit differently?
Not necessarily. I think one of the things that you can always credit a coach, if he played the game, he have a little sweat equity in the game, then you view him a little differently that way. You know, the respect is going to be given. You can always assure that he's going to put you in the best situation because he's been in the fire before. But it doesn't necessarily have, matter if you was a head coach or assistant coach. As long as you have something, to give us back about this game other than just X's and O's, we're going to always look at you and view you a little differently.
When you're a player and you say, okay, my coach played in the league, do you go and kind of like look up his numbers, his stats, kind of see how good he was?
You know what? That's a great question. I never did that. And I've had a lot of coaches that played this game and played in this league and played at a high level. Some of them automatically, but I never went out and looked at them. Like I said before, one of the things is given, whether you played or not, is the respect. You're going to give that guy respect. So regardless if he's a great player, as long as he's putting you in the right situation, you care less what he did.
But does he get the respect just because he played? Like, does that matter compared to maybe a coach that didn't play? Is that just kind of like more of a, hey, you're part of the brotherhood too?
Yeah, well, I find myself always sharing my experiences, and I played with a coach, 2 receiver coaches that I've had, actually played this game before and played at a high level, pro-wise. And one of the guys played with me, Keenan McCardell. So the respect is already given. You almost like that little brother almost still is like, man, I'm looking up to, because this is my coach. I remember him, especially, and Keenan was a guy that played in Jacksonville. So I grew up watching Keenan McCardell, then got a chance to play with him here. So you automatically give that guy that respect level and say, hey, this guy has a lot to share with me because he played at a high level in this league.
No, what about if it comes to losing respect? Is it different when you have a player's coach?
I think it's one of those things that, like I said before, you're going to give a guy the respect initially because that's what you're told to do. That's what you should do. Every man should have that respect from the next man. But it could be easily lost if I can see that you're not, me and you're not on the same page. You're not putting me in the right situation. I've been in those shoes before, having coaches in this building where I just kind of went to say, hey, you know what, whatever he says, we do. But at the end of the day, I'm going to go out there and do what I have to do because I know he's not giving me, the proper, not putting me in a proper situation.
Well, certainly they would have a different understanding of the game than a coach who didn't play it. But what about when it comes to offensive defense? Because I tend to think that, and maybe this is just me looking at a very surface level, but a lot of the head coaches or the coaches that are great seem to be come from the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah, it's odd because I had to do a little research myself, and I went down the line. And I'm just thinking about coaches, and that I played under, and coaches that I think highly of, and most of all the guys that I think highly of was defensive-minded coaches or played on the defensive side of the ball. So, and it's I scratch my head about that to this day. Like, why is that? And I didn't come up with a proper answer for it, but it just seems odd if you look over the whole entire league. Whether they played the position or not, those defensive-minded coaches have seemed to be the ones that stood the test of time and brought championships to that ball club.
Well, they do say defense wins championships,
Yeah,
right?
you're right?
So maybe there is something to that
Absolutely
old adage.
right.
So Jack Del Rio played linebacker, defensive coordinator, head coach, defensive coordinator. We will see what he does with this defense. I know Ron Rivera likes that he doesn't have to micromanage. He can trust Del Rio with the defense.